Okay, I think we are ready to start. And so today is September 4th, so this is the third day of the retreat. Okay, so now we are going to be progressing further in the contemplation of the body.
Bhante, the sound doesn't seem to come from your microphone.
Wait. Clearly? Hello?
Yeah, Jason. So it's I can hear you.
Clearly.
But Jason 好，不好意思，有一点回音，蛮强的。So there's an echoing. I think maybe that's what Brother CU is referring to.
Okay, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, it's good, Bhante, yes.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so now we've come to the third day of the retreat, and this is September 4th, I believe. And so now we are going to continue into the next stage of our contemplation of the body, or mindfulness of the body. And this is going to be the meditation on the so-called 32 parts of the body. Also, it's sometimes known in the suttas as Asubha Bhavana, which means the development of the idea of the impure or unattractive nature of the body. And I should say a few words about this, because this easily leads to misunderstanding. And I think we even find traces of that misunderstanding in the Buddhist tradition itself, where sometimes the body is depicted as being something ugly, foul, inherently repulsive, and it leads sometimes to an attitude of emotional disgust with the body. But that would be I would call that the incorrect attitude towards this meditation. The primary purpose of this contemplation of the parts of the body is to bring about a weakening of sensual desire, particularly in the form of sexual desire. And now, Buddhism doesn't regard sexual desire itself as being sinful or inherently evil, but sensual desire, sexual desire is a manifestation, an aspect, an expression of craving. And in our human life, it's one of the strongest manifestations of craving. And so, since the Buddha teaches that craving is the root cause of dukkha, of suffering, and of bondage, the ultimate aim of the Buddha's path is to uproot, to eliminate craving. And that means also to eliminate sensual craving in the form of sexual desire. But the Buddha doesn't make this something immediately obligatory for all of his followers. Generally, for the ordinary lay followers, he teaches the precept of abstaining from misconduct in regard to sexual enjoyment. And more devout lay people will occasionally observe an additional precept on special days, the Uposatha days, following the precept of the monastic person to abstain from all sexual activity, particularly on the full moon day, the new moon day, and the eighths, the in between the full and new moon. And so observing the restraint from sexual activity is a way of controlling the strong inherent sexual drive of the human mind. But as a further measure to weaken sensual desire, the Buddha teaches this meditation on the constituents of the body. Because the way sexual desire arises is through perceiving the bodies of others, as being beautiful and attractive. This is called the subhasanya, the perception of beauty or attractiveness in the body. And yet the Buddha teaches that that perception of attractiveness is something that the mind superimposes upon the body. I sometimes think an analogy, like we see a herd of cows. Okay, we just look upon them as a bunch of cows, none different from the other. But we let a bull into that pasture with a herd of cows, and the bull will be thinking, wow, that one's a beauty. Oh, that one's not beautiful at all. Wow, I want that one. We just see cows, but the bull, because its mind is sort of instinctively attuned to pick up a particular features of the cows, it will choose certain cows as being, wow, amazing. Somebody give me a picture of her and I'll put it up as a pin-up in my cow shed. Yeah, so our mind is attuned in that way to pick up perception of beauty. But the modality, the way, the mode of operation of this contemplation of the body, what we do is sort of to penetrate beneath the superficial beauty or attractiveness of the body, to look and see what is really there. What is the body really composed of? And then we will see that it is composed of these constituent parts. And if we were to lay these parts out on a table, maybe in a surgery room, here is the heart, here's the lungs, here are the intestines, the stomach, the brain. And then in certain files, we will put, here is the blood, here is the bile, here is the phlegm. We wouldn't find any of this very attractive. And yet we put it all together, we cover it over with a layer of skin, and maybe freshen it up with a nice shower, some perfume, a nice clothing, and then we see it as beautiful and attractive. Okay, so this is the sort of way in which the contemplation of the parts of the body works. And so what we do is to sort of take the body apart mentally and look at the constituent parts, and then we see that when we put these all together, that is what is really there. That is what we identify as the body, the beautiful, attractive body. And this is a practice not to be done just once and then forgotten, but it's through repeated practice that one gets more and more deeply, deeply familiar, more intimately familiar with the actual constitution of the body, of the physical body. Okay, so how does this work? Now I'm going to share the screen. Let me make sure I have the right files. Okay. First, let me just go through the list. There's a straight list, then we'll go through and examine them part by part, section by section. Okay, so we have the 32 parts, and so one contemplates this body as consisting of hairs of the head, hairs of the body, the nails, as fingernails and toenails, teeth, skin. Then one pierces beneath the skin to the flesh or muscles, the sinews, bones, bone marrow. Then one comes to the internal organs, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs. Then the next stage, intestines, large and small intestines, mesentery, stomach, feces, and brains, and the brain. Then we come to the fluids, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease of the skin, skin grease, saliva, nasal mucus, fluid of the joints, and urine. So those are the 32 parts. And now we're going to look at them sort of visually. And this isn't an anatomy class, but it's just, oh, I think what I have to do, yeah, I have to open the file first and then share it. Okay, so first we have parts that are purely external, hairs of the head, hairs of the body, would be the hairs on the arms, of the armpits, pubic area, some hairs on the legs. In males, there's often hair on the chest. So that's the body hairs. Then we have the nails, the fingernails, and the toenails, and then the skin. Is the screen visible? The diagram of the skin?
No, but it's not shared.
Oh, I see. Okay, I have to share. Okay, now I see what I have to do. Okay, so this is just a diagram of the skin. And you can see actually the skin is quite a complex organ or tissue. But we don't have to be able to get familiar with all of the different internal parts of the skin, but we just have an impression of the outer layer of the skin. That's enough. Now let's see if I can go to the other diagrams. Let's see. Do you see the diagram of the muscles?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay, so it moves. I don't have to go back to share. Okay, so we go from the skin, and once we go beyond the skin, then we come to the muscles. You see the entire body is covered over by this kind of layer of muscles. This is what we call flesh or muscle. Then we come to from muscles, sinews, And so the sinews is the tissue, tough tissue that connects the bone to bone and connects the muscles to the bones. Okay, then we come to the next diagram. This is the bones or the skeleton. So you could see from the skull, neck bones, the spine, the rib cage, the arm bones, pelvis, leg bones. You know, we don't have to, this isn't a biology class, so you don't have to know the names of all of the bones. But with each of these parts of the body in the practice, what we do is to recognize that this body, we take our own body as the object. We don't take the body of others initially. We take their own body and we come to the recognition, this is what my body consists of. So each of us, we have our own skeleton. So that skeleton is not just in anatomy diagrams, not just in horror movies, but the skeleton is, this body is built upon a skeleton. The skeleton is like the scaffolding for the body. And then within the bones, there is the bone marrow, but I don't have a diagram for that. Okay, then we come to the internal organs. So we go from, let me try to increase the size. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so we start with the kidneys. So this is a diagram is from the back, because the kidneys are towards the back. So you can see the two kidneys shaped somewhat like beans. Actually, there's a kind of bean called the kidney bean. Okay, then we have the heart. The heart is not so clearly visible in this diagram. Let me go to the next one. Okay, we have kidneys, then the heart. Again, this is not the best diagram, but we'll come to the heart again and some other diagrams. Heart, then the liver, you can see the liver very clearly. Then the diaphragm, which separates the upper part of the torso from the abdomen. Diaphragm. Then the spleen, you just see it peeking out here. I think it's clearer from the back. Yeah, here we get a better view of the spleen from the back. Spleen, and then the lungs. You see the two lungs. Okay, then we come to the next group. So the next group begins with the intestines, and the intestines include both the large intestine, also known as the colon, and the small intestine. You would see it's coiled up, a little bit like a hose that's wrapped up. And The next part is called the mesentery, which is not so clear unless you've done anatomy, which I haven't. It's probably not familiar to us. But the mesentery is a tough tissue that holds that binds the intestine to the back, or it holds the intestine in place. So when I do this, I usually pass over the mesentery quickly because I don't have a clear idea of it. Okay, from the intestines, mesentery, then we come to the stomach. So we have the stomach here, and then comes the fecal matter, which is actually builds up in the colon and accumulates in the rectum until it gets expelled with defecation. And then there is the brain. So those are called the solid parts of the body, more or less solid. Then come the fluids of the body: bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, and fat, then tears, then the skin grease, saliva, nasal mucus, fluid of the joints, the fluid that enables the joints, that enables us to bend and stretch the limbs. It's almost like oiling the joints of the limbs so that we could bend and stretch without pain. And then urine. And then to get some composite image of the body, we could take this diagram. So here you could see at the outer layer, the muscles or the flesh. Then we have the bones, the skeleton, the bones. We don't see the sinews very clearly, but they're necessary to hold the bones together. And because this is a front view, we don't get a clear view of the kidneys. But we could see the lungs, and then the heart will be sort of in between the lungs, and the liver, spleen is, I think, in the back. Lungs. Then we have the large intestine, small intestine. This has the bladder. The bladder isn't mentioned in the traditional list. The stomach, this is the stomach. And then we don't see the head here, so we don't see the brains. Yeah, in this diagram, you could see the heart more clearly than in the other one. And, okay, the lungs, here is the liver, and it gives the outline of the kidneys. Yeah, the outline of the kidneys. And you can see the spleen sort of peeking out from the back. And then we have the large intestine, the small intestine. There's some organs not mentioned in the traditional list, like the gallbladder, the pancreas, the bladder. And then up here we have the brain. Yeah, even though this meditation focuses on what we call the unattractive or impure nature of the body, from another angle, we could say that the body is quite an amazing instrument. Like we have all of these organs, like the heart has been beating every minute, every day, from the time of even the time of the fetal stage right up to the present. The heart doesn't get a chance to go on a 4-day retreat. If the heart were to say to me, Bhante, I'm going on a 4-day retreat. I think you'll manage in my absence. I just have to say, no way, you're not going anywhere. And sometimes the intestine goes on a little retreat, and then it becomes very uncomfortable, and then you have to take a little substance to give a little boost to knock it off its retreat and get it back into action. But otherwise, all of these organs, and they're always functioning all the time, and we don't even know what they're doing. They're doing so many jobs. The liver does so many jobs. The kidney does its work. The spleen. Unless you study anatomy or physiology, you don't know what these organs are doing, but they're doing the work all the time. So from one angle, the organs and tissues of the body are quite an amazing, miraculous construct. But we're focusing on the body from the aspect of the unattractive nature and not trying to deliberately develop a kind of repulsion towards the body, but just to take our own body and to examine it in terms of its constituents and to see what this body consists of, what it is composed of. And so we're going to practice this going down the 32 parts, and we go through it in a kind of serpentine pattern. As you'll see, I'll guide everyone through this practice. But first, before we start, let's just again stand up, do a little bending and stretching, and then we'll sit for the meditation. Just for 2 or 3 minutes of bending and stretching. Okay, we okay, we are ready to begin. So take your preferred sitting position. Back straight and upright, not stiff or rigid. And first, we sort of settle the mind with some rounds of a couple of minutes of mindfulness of breathing. Okay. Then, then you move to a full body awareness, not the scanning or the sweeping, but just being aware of the body in the sitting position. Just trying to take in the whole body as an integral whole. Then we're going to examine each our own body from the top of the head to the soles of the feet, from the soles of the feet up to the top of the head. I will mention each constituent of the body, then pause for a moment. And in that pause, you apply the thought, that particular constituent is in this body, your own body. So in this body, there are hairs of the head. There are body hairs. There are nails. fingernails and toenails. There are teeth. There is skin. The layer of skin extending from the top of the head all the ways down to the soles of the feet. Then we go back. There is skin, skin, teeth, teeth, nails, nails, hairs of the body, hairs of the head. In this body, there are hairs of the head, hairs of the body, nails, fingernails, toenails, teeth, teeth, skin, skin, then we go beneath the skin. There is flesh, flesh, sinews, binding the bones together, binding the muscles to the bones, sinews, there's bones, bones. You could kind of scan down the skeleton. And bone marrow. then backwards. In this body, there is bone marrow, bones, sinews, and flesh, or the muscles. And going forward, in this body, there is flesh, muscles, there are sinews, there are bones, and trace the bones from the skull all the ways down. And there is bone marrow. Okay, now the next group. In this body, there are the kidneys, 2 kidneys, the heart, the liver, beneath the diaphragm on the right side, the liver, then the diaphragm, the spleen, and the lungs, the 2 lungs. Then backwards, the lungs, spleen, diaphragm, liver, heart, heart, kidneys, kidneys, and in forward order again. In this body, there are kidneys, the heart, the liver, diaphragm, spleen, and lungs. Okay, now the next group. In this body, there are the intestines, large intestine and small intestine. Mesentery, the tissue that binds the intestines to the abdominal wall, this mesentery. The stomach, feces, and brain. And in reverse, brain, feces, stomach, mesentery, intestines, large intestine and small intestine. In this body, there are the intestines, mesentery, stomach, feces, and brain. And now we come to the fluids of the body. In this body, there is bile, a kind of greenish fluid manufactured by the liver that aids in digestion, the digestion of fats. So there is bile, phlegm, pus, blood, blood pervading the entire body, sweat, and fat. There is fat, sweat, blood, pus, phlegm, bile, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, then the next group. In this body, there are tears, even if we're not weeping, but there's tears that naturally flow over the eyes. So tears, the the grease of the skin, saliva, nasal mucus, fluid of the joints, and urine. Then there's urine. Fluid of the joints. Nasal mucus. Saliva. Grease of the skin. Tears. Tears. Grease of the skin. Saliva. Nasal mucus. Fluid of the joints. Urine. Thus, in this body, taken from the top of the head down to the soles of the feet, from the soles of the feet up to the top of the head, bounded by skin, there are these various unattractive, unbeautiful constituents. Okay, just now for about 5 minutes, not singling out particular parts, but just applying the contemplation we've just done to get a kind of composite image of the body and apply that to the whole body. Or you could simplify it just to skin, flesh, bones, internal organs, fluids. Okay, you can now relax, and we end the session in the usual way. Okay, now we'll be doing a period of the walking meditation. And now we advance one step further with the walking meditation. Remember, we progressed from 2 P's, so pushing and placing. Then yesterday I added picking up. So we had picking up, pushing, placing. Now, if you pay attention, when you put the foot on the floor, then you shift the weight, there comes a pressing of the foot that's been put on the floor, a pressing against the floor. So that will be now the 4th P. So now the phases to observe will be picking, pushing, placing, and pressing. So with each step, picking, pushing forward, placing, and with the shift of the weight, pressing. But again, don't divide them too artificially, like, okay, not picking, pushing, picking, pushing, placing, pressing. But it should flow naturally, like you're picking, pushing, placing, pressing, picking, pushing, placing, pressing. So you notice the different phases, but you don't artificially break up the step to get to accentuate those phases. Okay, so we just continue now for about, let us say, maybe close to 30 minutes. Then we'll come back for another session of the contemplation of the parts of the body. Okay, we can be back in our seats. Okay, so we'll go through another session of the parts of the body. And so take your congenial meditation seat. And then settle in a few rounds of mindfulness of breathing. Then come to full body awareness. Just sort of mentally scanning the whole body from the top of the head down to the feet, from the feet up to the head. Okay, and now we are going to undertake the practice of the Subha Bhavana, the contemplation of the unattractive nature of the body. And so we examine this body from the top of the head to the soles of the feet, from the soles of the feet upward to the top of the head. And we see that in this body there are hairs of the head, hairs of the body, nails, fingernails and toenails. Teeth, teeth, the 2 rows of teeth. And skin. The envelope of skin covering the entire the entire body. Then we go in reverse. In this body there is skin, skin, teeth, teeth, nails, nails, hairs of the body, hairs of the head, in this body there are hairs of the head, hairs of the body, nails, nails, teeth, teeth, and skin, skin. Okay, then we go to the next group, removing the layer of skin. There is flesh, flesh, the layers of muscles, There are the sinews binding the bones together and binding the muscles to the bones, sinews. There are bones, the entire skeleton, from the skull all the ways down to the bones of the feet. And bone marrow, and bone marrow, bones, the skeleton, sinews, and flesh. And flesh, sinews, bones, bones, bone marrow, bone marrow. Then the next group, in this body, there are the kidneys, the heart, liver, liver, diaphragm, spleen, spleen, lungs, lungs, and in reverse, there's the lungs, spleen, diaphragm, liver, heart, heart, and kidneys, kidneys. And kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, and lungs. Okay, the next group. In this body, there are the intestines, large intestine and small intestine. The mesentery, the tissue that binds the intestines to the abdominal wall. There is the stomach, stomach, there are feces accumulating in the colon. And there is the brain. Brain. In reverse, there is the brain. The feces, stomach, mesentery, and intestines, large intestine, small intestine. And forward, the intestines, mesentery, stomach, feces, and brain. Then for the fluids, there is bile, phlegm, pus, blood, blood pervading the entire body, flowing through the entire body. Sweat, sweat, sweat. Fat, fat, then back. There's fat, fat, sweat, blood, blood, pus, pus, phlegm, phlegm, and bile, bile. Then going forward again, there is bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, and fat. The next group, there are tears, tears, there's skin grease, skin grease, there's saliva, nasal mucus, fluid of the joints, and urine. And back, there's urine, fluid of the joints, nasal mucus, saliva, skin grease, tears, then tears, skin grease, saliva, nasal mucus, fluid of the joints, and urine. So those are the 32 constituents in this meditation. So now just for a few minutes, just contemplate as a whole this body from the top of the head down to the feet, from the feet up to the top of the head, as constituted of these various constituents. I put one of the slides up on the screen, and you could just refer to it to get a composite image of the whole internal body. So you can get that image from the screen, then apply it to your own body, recognizing that is the nature of this body. Okay, you can relax now. Yeah, one thing sometimes people have the question, it's an interesting question. Why does this list put the brain after the feces? Did the early Buddhists think so lowly of the brain that they put it after feces? Well, you see, the original list that occurs in the older suttas, like in the Satipatthana Sutta, has just 31 constituents, and it ends the so-called solid parts of the body with the feces, and it doesn't include the brain. But then maybe the next generation of Buddhist texts, they must have been, the composers must have been wondering, why isn't the brain there? We have to include the brain. And the traditional way in the Buddhist text of adding an item to a list is to put it either at the beginning or at the end. But the brain wouldn't fit at the beginning because the beginning starts with the parts of the body that are immediately visible, head hairs, body hairs, and so on. So the natural place to put it is at the end, the end of the solid constituents, and a little embarrassing for us that it comes after the feces. But that's the explanation. Okay, so we will come back. We'll take the break now for the meal. And again, try to maintain your mindfulness and clear comprehension through the intervening activities between now and the next session. If you're taking your meal there, the way we are here in the East Coast, then try to follow the protocol that I described the other day, where you are mindful of each step or each biteful of food in terms of the 5 phases. Taking the food, that's 1. Putting it into the mouth, 2. Chewing the food, tasting it, and swallowing. So taking, putting in the mouth, chewing, tasting, and swallowing. And the last 3 don't necessarily go in a fixed sequence, because while you're chewing, also taste will, the consciousness of taste will arise. And then to some extent, you'll be swallowing while you're continuing to chew and taste. But you try to observe those phases. And one of the advantages of doing this, being mindful of eating, if you have an inclination to overeat, then practicing this clear comprehension of eating will reduce the tendency to overeat and ensure that you eat in the proper measure, that you eat enough to satisfy the appetite and to quench the pangs of hunger, but you won't be inclined to eat too much. And I asked Venerable Mangala, I just want to make sure that you are here, you got my message, to do the review and the to guide the 32 parts for the next session.
You got it, Bante.
Okay. Okay, so please return at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll continue with our practice. Okay, so I'm going to. We do the 3, I'm sorry. We should do the 3 half bows to end the session. Okay, so we'll be doing 3 half bows to the Buddha.
Three half bows to the Buddha. Bow to Bante.
Thank you, Bante Bodhi. Have a good lunch. Be safe.
Okay.
Thank you, Bante.
See you in the afternoon.
Bante. Bante.
Thank you, 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 Bante.